what we have always offered in the past. Again, you can find that information in our weekly newsletter and on social. So be sure to subscribe to that, as well as following us on social media. So if you guys also have any deals, promotions, specials, free consultations, anything like that, please be sure to send that over to myself, Elmer, or Elizabeth. We are happy to highlight you, promote you, and we will be coming out with some other offerings in the next few months to make sure that our member promotions, deals, and things like that are being spread out into the community. So with that, we will get started. So as you can see our agenda here, so we'll have some brief words from Elmer and Elizabeth, so you guys can, see us. Wish we could be in person, but I'm happy that you guys could all join us today. We normally do growth stories during our member meetings to make it a little bit more concise and to highlight very specifically some of the amazing stories that we have from our members. We have Mark Naber from West Allis Blue. They had a great feature in the Journal Sentinel about their pivot story. That's really, really done well for them. So we'll have a brief Q&A with Mark, and then we will get into our main programming with Jerry Jendusa and Paul Schulls. So super excited about that. Please know that we will send out a one-sheet overview of the information that you're going to get today, as well as a worksheet that Paul and Jerry utilize with a lot of their own clients and businesses as well. So with that, I'm going to pass it on over to Elizabeth. And before she gets started, just a reminder of all the specialties that we focus on individually, if you guys are interested in those individual office hours. I do have our general email at the bottom of that slide. Again, we'll send this information out again, but feel free to reach out if any of those areas of expertise interest you. So Elizabeth?
All right. Hi, everyone. Elizabeth Szynski here. I'm the program manager for Scale Up Milwaukee, and it's wonderful to see you all today. I really wish that it could be face-to-face. Echoing Mallory, I'm sending love and strength and good vibes to all of you right now. Happy Cinco de Mayo to everyone. And I hope you and your loved ones are staying safe and healthy and trying to stay sane. So as many of you know, we would typically be recruiting for our next cohort of Growth Accelerator. That's our accelerator program targeting companies over $1 million in revenue, and we typically launch it in June. Given the current circumstances, we have decided to postpone cohort 7 of Growth Accelerator until early 2021. We're hoping to launch cohort 7 in January and then host cohort 8 in the summer, again in conjunction with our wonderful teams at both the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee and Paulette Stock. So as difficult as a decision this was to make, we are super excited to offer even more relevant content in the new year and to offer a second session next year as well, again with our amazing partners. So if you have any questions or want to be considered for those next cohorts, please don't hesitate to contact me. And with that, I'll toss it over to Elmer.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. It's really a wonderful occasion that we get to reconnect with all of you. We do hope that you are safe, that you are sane, and that you are finding ways to make this extraordinary moment productive. I just want to take a second to remind everyone that the best way forward is often through. That's a version of a Robert Frost quote. And I think it's just important for us to consider how the best method for us to recover and in fact grow out of this moment is to find opportunities, tools, and ways to stick together, to learn from one another, to coordinate and in fact to cooperate. We have been doing our best at the Scale Up headquarters, if you will, to be responsive to your needs. Please keep letting us know what you'd like to see from us, what you'd like from us. Please keep using our office hours. Please keep sending us any information which you all believe will help us distribute resources more effectively and more proactively to our members and to our guests and to all of the Scale Up family. We're excited that you're here. We're excited that you're taking this opportunity to learn and to think ahead, and we hope the best for you. So if this goes well, we should see each other soon in person where we can share the same space, if not the same air. Thank you. Mallory?
Thank you, Elmer. And with that, we'll get going on the program. So Mark Naber with West Allis Blue went through our growth accelerator in cohort 5. They own a large format printing business. Was once, in the name West Allis Blue was for blueprints, and they've shifted to a host of other products. During the pandemic, when it first started, Mark reached out to us and, like many owners, was in a little bit of a panic, but they truly were able to pivot and right-size their business and offer in a new product line. Oopsie. So with that, welcome, Mark.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So how were you first impacted by the stay-at-home order?
Yeah, great question. So your word panic is totally accurate when I look back. The first 2 weeks, once the NBA was shut down and we were talking about closures, it was straight up panic time. My sister and I purchased this company in June of last year, so we're fresh and new. And so here we are 6 months in, and we're looking at a major recession right in the face. And we saw pretty early on that it was going to be a significant economic event. So it took us about 2 weeks to call you guys, call every attorney, call HR, call everything, and get it figured out. And once we got through the panic, then we were able to kind of buckle down and get to work on how we're going to do something about this. And I really got to, say thank you to Elmer, Paul, and Jerry, the Stuck people. We just went back to day one of Growth Accelerator, which is vision and mission statement. I mean, day one, what do you really do at your business? And our vision statement is that we amplify creativity. And all of our customers were closing. The pro sports stadiums shut down, were kicked off of job sites, schools closed. All we did was take the vision and apply it to a new customer set, which is all the kids that are stuck at home. Amplify creativity. We created sets, activity sets and large format drawings, coloring sets and word searches, and to amplify children's creativity. So it's just a real natural pivot for us. We have large format equipment not being used, and there's kids stuck at home. How do we connect those dots? Lots of people are telling me that it's a great idea, and it's just I got these guys to thank.
That's amazing. Thank you, Mark. So, how has it changed your forecast, and what does it mean for you after the stay-at-home order?
Yeah, great question there too. So, we're a small firm. We're 17 people. We relied on our peers quite a bit at the beginning of the pandemic rollout. We don't have sophisticated forecasting tools. So the question is, how do you plan when you don't know what your business is going to be next month? And we just had to kind of use some of our peers' numbers, and we were planning on 50%. So we made a financial plan at 50%. And once we got, the bank on board and payroll in order, got it all figured out, then we just said, what can we do differently? So that's when we decided to launch a consumer, a direct-to-consumer division, if you will. It's something we've never done before, right then and there. So we're forecasting out to be about flat right now, which is tremendous compared to where we were staring at about 6 weeks ago.
That's awesome. And you mentioned, going through the accelerator and working with the Scale Up team and Jerry and Paul at Stuck. You mentioned the vision and mission statement. Can you walk us through a little bit about that and how you were able to stay grounded and rooted in that through this?
Yeah, like I said, it's boiling it down to the lowest common denominator. What do we really do? And what's the great Simon video? It's not what you do, it's why you do it, right? Tremendous. That had a lasting impact on me. And a lot of, we're marketing our products nationally, but the fact that most of our orders are coming within a 20-mile radius, people understand that we're a small business that normally does one thing and is now doing something else. And people want to do business with us because of our story. It's not necessarily just the product, it's why we're doing it that has a huge impact, I think.
That's awesome. Well, do you have any tips or strategies to share with our members and our attendees today? Any takeaways from what you've gone through?
Yeah, the thing that annoys me the most, I'm on peer calls. We do a national network that we do twice a week. And I keep telling the people that organize these calls, all we do for an hour straight is talk about the free government stuff. And it bothers me that that's all we're going to talk about for 2 hours a week. We got all these supposedly smart people all together. There's 40 people in a call just like this. And all we're talking about is the strategy for loan forgiveness. And we're not talking about any, these guys are laying off half their staff and they're not thinking about what can they do differently. So that's I don't know if it's a good tip, but that's what we did is we immediately started thinking about it's never too late to start. What are we going to do totally different from the playbook that's going to generate revenue and keep our people working?
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mark, for taking the time to discuss all of this with us. Congratulations on, true pivot. A great example of what we're about to get into here with Jerry and Paul. And we're so happy to have you as a member.
I thank all of you guys. Elizabeth and Mallory, too. You guys are all great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark. All right, so now we will get into the main event. So we have with us Jerry Jendusa, co-founder and partner of Stuck, and also a co-chair of our Scale Up Milwaukee Executive Committee. We also have with him Paul Schulls, co-founder of Stuck and partner as well, and one of our program facilitators for our Growth Accelerator program. So very involved with all the businesses that have gone through our accelerator programs alongside Elizabeth, who's instrumental in that program as well. So with that, I will pass it off to the two of them. Again, please note that we will send all of this information out along with their worksheets to help you start planning for your business when this is all said and done. So I will hand it off to you guys.
Paul, you go first. And Paul's muted.
Oh no.
So anyway, we're, as Marilyn mentioned, thank you so much, Jerry Jendusa and Paul Schultz from Stuck Breakthrough Strategies. And we're very proud to work with Scale Up Milwaukee, and just wanted to talk through some tips today of what we impart with the members of Scale Up Milwaukee, and hopefully we can bring you some value today. So, all that being said, going back in history, Jerry, you ran a heck of a aerospace company, if I recall, and having an aerospace company through 9/11 and through 2008 was quite a daunting thing. And now we're in the middle of this crisis. And I was wondering if you could share some wisdom as to how your mindset has kind of changed as you've went through each of these three instances, and what your thoughts are and what you can impart to the people listening.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. And before, just a quick backdrop. Very appreciative to be a part of this. I've been a part of the Scale Up movement in Milwaukee since 2014. Dan Eisenberg and his vision that brought the concept of an ecosystem, this entrepreneurial community. I had the great fortune of going out to Babson College and listening more. And when I was running that aerospace company called MTech, Dan had interviewed actually one of our employees who was getting an accelerated MBA program. And so it really captured me as to this devotion for small business, growth acceleration, growth stories, and then just that whole definition of what that means to grow even in a shrinking economy. And so the preface, we're going to, the question is such a good question, and it goes back to an aerospace company in 9/11, an aerospace company in 2008. There was these aircraft, and they hit these towers in New York, and it was such a tragic experience. And the world changed so quickly then. And I relate that to what's happening right now with the COVID pandemic, and how quickly people have had to go, oh my God, literally what is in front of me? I now am considered a non-essential business. there's no such thing as a non-essential business, but I'm considered a non-essential business. I had a storefront and now my storefront is closed. So there's so many similar parallels, and it's one thing to plan and to strategize and put together metrics, but the first part is just that mindset as to what can you do and how do you go about doing it. And I think some of the bigger things that I learned is vulnerability. And it took me a long time to actually be able to be more vulnerable. And when somebody is vulnerable, you have more of a propensity to ask for help. And listening to what Mark was saying and reaching out to others, collaborating, sharing best practices, listening. I would say that as from a leader standpoint, I was not as good during 9/11 as what I was during the Great Recession. Although we drastically pivoted and we did different things, I really was very lonely when I was doing it and didn't necessarily get as many people involved as what I perhaps should have. And so it's just a parallel of a business journey, of a life journey, and this big thing of what it means to be a solid leader. And it's okay to be vulnerable. In fact, it's really appreciated to be very vulnerable right now, which then gets into the whole concept of communication and over communicating and asking for help.
And I think along the lines of that type of communication, just creating that positive environment and positive culture, what tips do you have and what are you using at your businesses that you currently own and run to create that positive vibe and that productivity and decreasing that kind of aura of fear that staff may have at a time like this?
I think the first thing, it's okay to maybe cuss and swear a little bit and to say shit and say, oh my God, literally what just happened? That our world has just gone upside down. Our business could shut down. There's a lot that's going on. And then to me, you can do that, but you need the 24-hour rule and you stop. And then you really have to think about it in a way of, am I going to feel sorry for myself? And how long is that going to last? How often am I going to listen to the media? What is going to be the mindset? Who am I going to listen to? And if people are telling me what I can't do versus surrounding myself with people, hey, what can we do? And so that whole mindset, first you may be paralyzed, so you don't do anything at all. Or maybe you do way too much and you frantically do a lot of different things and you do these major pivots in so many different ways. But if you can stabilize yourself and your mindset, and you can ground yourself to those fundamental core values that you have as an individual, that your business has, that's based on why you do what you do in the first place, it's actually a very magical time. Because if you have a crisis, you can actually change people's mindsets, and people are more willing to pivot today than ever before because they're forced to, because they have to. And so it's almost celebrating what we're going through, and easier said than done. But for me, Paul, it was more, I'm gonna avoid listening to external noise. I'm gonna surround myself with positive thoughts. Whether it's I'm exercising or I'm taking a quick walk in the morning, or I'm gonna swear, whatever it is. But to be able to say, hey, I still am vulnerable, but I personally needed to ground myself to what my purpose is. Why do I do what I'm doing? Who am I doing it for? And how can we even do it better? Because planning and execution of plans should be done all the time. If you're not growing, you're dying. And then it just gets into how you define growth. And I know even with the scale up folks, sometimes we're like, oh my God, we can't accelerated growth. We can't be talking about growth. But you can be growing as a business with your profits down 50%. You can be growing as a business because when you come out on the other side, if you're doing certain things, you may be pivoting now doing e-commerce, or you may be taking a coaching business now and going at a national level where you're scaling because you're using virtual meetings and before you never used those before. So there's so many great opportunities. But that mindset for me, I had to like brainwash myself to say over and over again that every problem is an unforeseen opportunity. So every problem is an unforeseen opportunity. So everything's got to be looked at as if it's an opportunity.
I remember in '08, along the lines of making it a great place to work with that positive messaging, you actually left your office and took a cube in the middle of our program managers and sales folks. And I feel like that lent itself to a collective effort to actually scale the business in spite of what was going on at the time. What were your thoughts that made you actually do that?
Well, it's interesting because when you think of yourself as a leader, and here I had the personification of the corner office, right? So I had this really nice office and a nice little table that was around the office, but I was away from the action, right? And what happens in this corporate umbrella in this big office versus like in 2008, you had to pivot in relation to commercial aerospace was really bad. There was TARP financing and reforms that were taking place at the time. It was a horrific scene. Companies were covering up their tail numbers on their private aircraft, and that was like 80% of our business. So it was really messed up. There were corporate CEOs from the auto manufacturers that were driving, people making $7.5 million a year, driving their minivans to lobby to the U.S. government. So it's just really a weird dynamic in a really strange time. But what value am I adding if I'm, sitting back and trying to do long-term strategy? And I think some of the salient points that we're gonna talk, and as we're giving these nuggets and talking, the takeaways are: you got to live for today, you got to eat tomorrow, you got to make payroll. So maybe you're throwing out that 3 to 5 year plan. Maybe that strategy's gone away, and that business that was a $72 million to $20 million gain was more like an $8 million drop, but it was the best of times. And if we wouldn't have pivoted like that, we would have been down 30%. We could have been out of business. And I didn't necessarily add that much value with what I was doing. There were people that were way more skilled than I, but at least I could listen to the employees. I could listen to, how do we potentially change our goals? How do we create a theme? And in that case, there's a book by Pat Lencioni, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And he talks in that book about creating a thematic goal. And if you think of a theme and you think of a major goal, something to rally around. So creating a rallying cry, in our particular case, it was capturing our unfair share. So yeah, this was a bad plight, and corporate aviation got a really bad name. But it is what it is. So we had to pivot. The best way to pivot was being around these teams. And as a leader, I was very thankful at that time that we had professional coaching in our organization. We had brought you on board before that. So I had learned and developed tools and skills, more leadership tools, being more self-aware, feeling that it's okay to be vulnerable, asking for help. If you were me, what would you do in that situation? You have certain suppliers that you could partner with. You have customers, listening to that voice of that customer, because they're the ones that are really going to allow us to now pivot today. So what is our purpose for being here? What is our vision and mission? Who are we doing what for? What services are we offering? Are there additional services we can offer? But it really comes back to, what do those customers need? How are they suffering? What are their pain points?
Yeah, exactly. If we could break it down to steps that the listeners could take starting tomorrow, based on your summary, starting with a plan, what would you say those steps would be?
This is where we need you as the professional coach and advisor to give those steps, because I'm an entrepreneur and I go all over the board.
I can't answer that because I have to ask the question.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I would, you know, in all seriousness, that first step is that mindset and
Mhm.
getting your mind right. What are you doing to get your mind right? I saw something that you put out recently that's like, stop listening to the news a little bit. If you pick up the paper, all you're going to hear about is this pandemic crisis, the number of beds that are open or not open, and who the test cases. And we have business to do. We've got people to serve. So it that mindset becomes really, really important, and positivity, and that every opportunity is there, even though it's a major challenge today. That second point, then listening, evolving, creating, and really, really important is the biggest part, and sometimes small business owners really struggle with this, is you have to manage your cash. I mean, just like literally, how much money do you have in your bank? And relying like on a PPP loan, and maybe you're going to get it. You don't know when you're going to get it. How much are you going to get? Is it going to be forgivable or not? Who cares? You have to really operate your business as if you don't have any type of support from anyone, because you don't want to be reliant on anyone. So, but to quickly look at your forecast and adjust it. And when I say that, plan for the worst and expect the best. So maybe you had to cut the forecast by 50%, but quickly go in and adjust a forecast. When you think of creating something, keep it simple. Look at maybe 5 or 7 major initiatives and think of what it is you're doing. When I think of a business, I think of a basketball analogy, because this Jordan documentary is really kind of cool, and the Jordan rules and everything else. But you think of it, you've got offense and you've got defense. And on offense, you're hustling. You're doing a lot of stuff to create points, to score. And there I think of innovating and customers and velocity and ideation and green light thinking and what new solutions can we offer. And while you're doing that, also think of productivity. How can we be more cost effective? What types of cost controls? Do we have to do cost cutting? How are we going to do cost cutting? If we're laying off people, are there certain people that want to take a certain amount of time off where then they can come back to work? So getting that whole involvement of innovation, customers, ideation, what types of initiatives can we take, then being a little bit more efficient and effective, then always worrying about your staff, your people, and how you communicate. And then what types of standards do you have? So you're going to have a standard meeting. It's going to be a stand-up meeting weekly. It's now going to be daily communication. We've got virtual communication going on. So all of those things coming together creates a very simple plan, and then relentlessly executing on the plan, and now checking up on that plan even weekly. And with that positive mindset, because to me, that's then what's going to create a great work experience.
A fun thing that we've been working with Scale Up members has been listening to the customers and creating new revenue buckets based off of what their needs are along the lines of what the times present as challenges to them. Can you speak to your method that you profess to your sales folks of generating new revenue buckets, new sources of revenue coming out of a crisis to escalate the growth of that business?
Sure. I think I think that collaboration is huge. I think that if you truly are in this to serve others, and you feel so passionate about the work that you're doing, and I would say that most small business owners have such a passion about the work that they're doing, that they want to serve others. And this whole concept of a transaction, where a transaction takes place after you're solving someone's problems. And so from a sales process standpoint, you've got a brand, you have brand equity in this business that's created. And if you're an individual salesperson, you've even created a little bit of a brand in yourself. How do you capitalize on those relationships that you have by truly listening to customers and not necessarily selling a feature or benefit of a product? And that's amazingly how people are coming up with these wonderful pivot stories, because how can I help? How can I help? What can we do to help? Here's kind of what our core competencies are. Maybe you want to look at us a little bit differently because we have some competencies that you might not even be familiar with, but let's keep our minds open collectively, and let's do business with people we like to do business with and people who we value and we trust, especially when we're separated and we're doing things virtually. And then what types of tools can we use? And Paul, sometimes it's as simple as sending out care packages with a handwritten note that says thank you. One of our businesses, we're putting together hand sanitizer, we're putting a label on it, and we're shipping out hand sanitizer. Another one is doing care packages, just thinking of you today, right? I mean, I'm worried about you and your family as a person. So once again, it's not just a transaction. We value you as people. We're in this together, and we're going to come through on the other side okay, but we still have to feed our families today, right? So we still need to make a little bit of money. So it gets into risk sharing. It gets into thinking of things a little bit differently. And it gets into okay with accepting growth, even if you're going to be losing a little bit of money, as long as you can manage that cash. And sometimes you actually are better served by being more aggressive today, as weird as that sounds, because you're going to get told you have to cut costs. You're going to get, there's a lot of people that are telling you what you need to do in order to keep your loan. You're going to have to do this. What if you end up hiring a really, really good salesperson right now who is available on the street? Because nobody else might be doing that. So that's a way. What if you do things in an innovative manner that you're brainstorming by listening, and you're collaborating with another business that you might never have done something like that with before, but you don't have to do it all on your own. You don't have to manufacture the product on your own if you're a manufacturing company. As long as you can create value and you can create something, you're offering a service to someone else. So that whole thought process, I could be a product producer and now I'm offering a service, and I never really thought of myself as a service provider. So those are just some of those tips there.
Sure. By focusing staff on creating, as Jerry had said, versus the doom and gloom, you decrease the level of fear amongst staff members and therefore increase productivity. So that's one of the key takeaways. Mallory, if we could go to some slides and help summarize our points. So Jerry touched on leadership mindset, positive communication, creating new revenue buckets, exciting new things, getting both, communicating formally and informally, setting that pace, setting that schedule, have some folks who are struggling to manage folks that are working at home, get that, quote unquote, stand-up meeting in the morning for 10 minutes, call over Zoom, whatever it is, get everyone aligned. Sometimes the leader just wants to know what their staff is working on. It's also important for staff to know what each other's working on. It happens osmotically by when they're sitting next to each other. Now they may not be, so it's important that they keep in touch with each other. Next slide, please. Tweaking the forecast, as Jerry had alluded to, listening to customers, asking them what their pain points are. I think they're more apt right now to avail what those are. And maybe it's not something we can solve right now, but maybe it's something we keep in the parking lot that we can address later to create an actual revenue bucket from. Simple plan, 5 easy top initiatives, keep in mind, labeling them under, financial growth, customers, innovation, productivity, great place to work with staff. Anything to add to that, Jerry?
No, you're going good. And all I'll say is that for everybody who's listening, please feel free to ask questions. Challenge what it is we're saying, share best practices as best we can through a virtual learning session. I've got, as you go through these, Paul, there's some really good comments that Elizabeth was able to capture prior to the meeting that we'll also can talk about, and some very relevant ones to what you're sharing here.
Hey, Jerry.
Next slide.
Yes, Mallory.
We've got a question from Rosalind. She went through our Spark program this last year. What does an emergency plan look like after COVID-19?
What does an emergency plan look like after COVID-19? I would say that it should look fairly similar to before COVID-19, but it's the action steps that you're taking as you're going through it. And perhaps she could comment a little bit more. And just to share some things, if you're dreaming with your staff and you're doing certain things, we can be very real here. There could be certain businesses that go out of business. There could be new business units or new entities that start up. You really have to understand what it is that you're involved with, where your risks are at, when you potentially want to cut losses on certain things. And when I say that, I don't necessarily mean shutting down a business, although maybe you have to orchestrate a shutdown. I mean shutting down a product line or a service. Maybe there's a certain product line or a certain service you have that you've always had, and it's always been a really, really low margin product or service. Now is a really good time to get rid of it. Maybe there's a customer you had that you volunteered to do work for this customer because they've been a legacy customer, but you've been losing money with this customer for the last 10 years. Now is probably a good time to either raise the price with that customer or to gradually let that customer go elsewhere for the product or service that they need. So kind of this new norm gets into the spirit of continuous improvement, the spirit of constant growth and constant evolution, because your businesses are a journey, and your journey is going to have peaks and valleys. And as long as you feel good about how you're going through your journey and how you're growing, even if you just can't measure finances only, you have to set some goals that are related to your pivot points and what you're doing, and celebrate those successes, as painful as it might be. And I can share with you, and I know Paul can too, as Paul owns a coaching business, and as I own multiple businesses, you don't know what it feels like to be a small business owner until you've had to make payroll. And typically you're cutting your salary first. Maybe people have gone down to they're paying themselves half as much as what they used to make. So it's a really painful process. And that's why to celebrate the entrepreneurs and the business owners and help as much as we possibly can today, that's what this is all about.
Next slide, please. Yeah, just accountability. Who's doing what by when in light of the shorter term plans. I think when it go through a crisis like this, plans can become a little bit shorter versus an annual plan, which you always have. You may need to pivot in the near future, and who's doing what by when, and communicating that throughout helps with accountability, but it also helps with speed, and as Jerry alluded to, the velocity of the business, which is really important. Next slide. And then just relentless execution on those plans in light of the customer. So I know Jerry has said that it always rings true. It could be the best of times or it could be the worst of times, and you do it the best you can to make it the best of times and come out of this that much better of a business. Next slide. And just positive communication, talking about growth, culture of growth, and pushing. think that is our last slide.
Yeah, and to
I'll tell you,
comment, oh, go ahead, Paul.
I just was going to say, I did a webinar a couple weeks ago, and I got a question of somebody saying, you profess planning. I'm so busy putting out fires. When am I supposed to find time to plan? And, you know, my response to that was, nobody plans, aligns their staff, and executes to that plan because they have time. They do it because they choose to be great. And Scale Up is offering a lot of information, tips, tools, and processes to their members, as well as these peer groups. And I'll tell you that the peer groups are well on their way using all that Scale Up provides to well on their journey into becoming great companies. And so I guess, you know, my final 2 cents would be try to make the decision to be great and lean on Scale Up and get into one of those groups and benefit from what it is they all offer, because they're really doing the right things for the right reasons. I'm sorry, Jerry, what you're going to say?
Well, there's a question that just came in from Mark, and he's talking about investments. And, you know, do you wait to rebound, or do you dive in now expecting to rebound in 6 months to a year? And I think everybody's situation is their personal situation needs to be assessed.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say the bolder the moves you make today, the bigger return you're going to get in the future. The bigger the risk, the bigger the return. So just think about that from a risk standpoint. The bigger the risk, the bigger return. But if you're going to take a risk, you've got to be grounded with what your purpose is, why you're doing what you're doing. Are you in it for the long haul? Do you have staying power? And financially, do you have a little bit of a backup? I mean, is there a little bit of cash reserve in the bank? Or what is that banking relationship with? I think of business and I think of stakeholders, and there's multiple stakeholders in this business. So we've talked about employees and messaging to employees and communicating the right way, standardized, informal, formal. We've talked about our customers, listening to our customers, voice of the customers, ideation with customers. We've talked about collaborating with suppliers, listening to it could be a service provider, it could be a manufacturing partner. Hey, how could we collectively 1 + 1 = 3? But the other aspect of the equation of the stakeholder is that local banker or a financial lender or financial institution that you can partner with. But if you have a really, really good sales proposition, and ideally you've landed a customer, I know of stories of individual companies that have landed customers with dealing with the protective equipment devices for local hospitals. And as they've collaborated and have they done open source design, there's one startup business that now is providing a product to children's. And it's, so there's ways to do this. And I bring this up because get a customer contract, get an email with a letter of intent from a client that says, if you are able to do this, we are going to provide you with this amount of money, or we're going to purchase this X number of units over this period of time. So there's so many different things that you can do, but alignment is critical, and cash is king, and having a great financial partner makes all the difference in the world. And I'd much more profess, what can you do for very cost effectively or for no money at all to help scale something in ways you never would scale before? Are there any other? I've got a couple of things that I just want to go through, Elizabeth, off of your spreadsheet. Just areas that I've highlighted, and Paul, you might even want to comment on some of these as well. Working from home, managing employees, this whole thing with employee trust, and ensuring, how do I ensure that this employee is really being productive when they're working from home? Like in my case, sometimes my dog is walking in the background, my wife is walking in the background, I might not be fully focused on what I'm doing. So when you think of employees and you think of business trust and they're working from home, what are some tips that you'd have there?
For me personally, it's transparency, and it's developing a tool, regardless of what it is. It could be as simple as a photograph of a dry erase board that has Post-its on it, who's working on what that day or that week. What I find is a problem is multiple people doing double work, and the efficiency breakdown in light of that lack of being in the same physical location. So I think it's creating some sort of method of universally visible accountability piece of just who's working on what in light of ever-changing plans.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. And when you say that to me, I always think of a single page plan. I go right to a pillar on productivity. I think of cost effectiveness. I think of process mapping. And you're changing a work cycle. You're now working remotely. What are the steps, right? What are the steps that you go through when you're handing off work? And that is one of the biggest areas where people are stepping on each other's toes in businesses nonstop today because of they're working remotely, and it's the left hand and the right hand and flow and alignment of work. And what are your deliverables? Even in our small little operation, the more that we can at the start of the week, 8 o'clock or 8:30 on Monday morning, here's what I've got going on for the week. Here's what my plan is. What's your plan? What is waste? Because we want to eliminate waste every single day right now. Whatever we were doing that's wasteful, we want to cut it. We just want to kill it. So I use the term DOE, delegate, organize, and eliminate activity. What can you delegate? What can you organize? And what can you just eliminate? Just kill. If it's non-value add to revenue or innovation or serving a client, don't do it. Even if your plan says to do it. If your plan is altered so much, throw away your plan. Start with a new simple single page plan, 5 to 7 initiatives. What are the metrics you're going to use? How are you going to measure it? Keep it simple. Have fun with it. It could be a thumbs up, thumbs down, thumb sideways, and rock and roll a little bit. Next comment. Somebody's like, trying to help my team not to panic when I'm panicking. Can you comment on that at all, Paul?
Yeah, I think a clear-cut short-term plan and focusing them on executing off of that plan, because what we're afraid of is the unknown. And if we know what we're going to be doing collectively to make our way through this, there's comfort in executing to something that we know what we need to be working on, and it also takes our attention away off of bad stuff. So I think it's incumbent upon the leader to collectively with the staff make that plan, and then constantly communicate the status and the progress to that plan, and keeping the staff focused on that plan and all the good things that are going to come in light of it.
Yep. We're all in it together, right? That's what the buzzword is today. We're all in it together. We're all in it together. We're all panicking together. We're having fun with it. We might even be having a cocktail when we're working on Cinco de Mayo. I don't know. I mean, I've got something in this mug here, and you don't fully know what's in there. I'm not sharing, but that's what this is all about. A couple of tips as we go through this. Lori Rifkin has a couple really good points to bring up here. And he's asking all rhetorical questions. And as a coach or an advisor, the open-ended questions sometimes are the best questions to ask, right? It's, what will my customers expect going forward? What lessons did you learn the last 3 months? So continuous improvement, lessons learned. Did your bank perform like you expected them to perform? Yes or no? This could be an opportunity to get a new banking relationship.
Yep.
Which banker might want to take a risk on this small business that now has a 40% decrease in revenue? And if the small business is sharing with them what their steps are, maybe you can form an even stronger relationship with the bank. It doesn't always have to be worse. And I was terrible at that during 9/11. I'd only talk to the banks when the sun was shining, right? Because I only thought the banks liked me when I had a lot of money and a lot of good profit. And I'd always be like, zip, I'm not sharing anything with the bank regarding my bad performance. But that's bad. Don't act like I did during 9/11. What new business opportunities can you see? and he goes on to say, what customers/products are no longer profitable? So take a look
Sure it
at
is.
all of your customers, your key accounts, rate them. When we coach, when I listen to Paul coach an exercise on an ideal customer, why is this customer ideal? Because there's a real good margin associated with that customer. Because I'm adding so much value, I'm not dealing with a commodity. I've got such a value add to this product or service, and I've got great margin. And it's a long-term customer that accepts when I make mistakes. We take risks together, we grow together, yada, yada, yada. What cash financing needs will you require? So those are a lot of really good tips. Erica Sinclair, CEO from Health Connections, she talks about awareness and she talks about flexibility. I probably am overusing the term pivot today, and I feel bad about doing it because now everybody's using pivot. She talks about adaptation. How can you adapt to the situation? And that's really, really good. But she also talks about this business modeling, and she gets into the mindset, because you can do all the best, you can have the best plan in the world and the best tools. If you don't have the right mindset, that is never, ever going to work, because the people aspect of it is always more important than the process to me, because the people are the ones that are executing this process. Another individual goes on to talk about Dave Velchek from Interstate Roof Systems. We're alive. We've implemented daily calls with our staff, and we're working from home, and we are achieving this accountability. And most importantly, he says direction. So it's that eliminating of the waste, the duplication of efforts, etc. If there's one Q&A that just popped in, I've got some others highlighted here. Lori goes on to say, your future will be determined by the questions you ask today. How profound is that? Keep asking questions, dare to dream, dare to live, don't be fearful, celebrate what we're going through, learn from what we're going through, and great things will happen regardless as to what the financial results are going to look like over the next 30, 60, 90 days. And you want to make sure you have that staying power, because staying power is so critical. You don't want to be a flavor of the day. You don't want to jump on a bandwagon. If you're going to do something, you're going to pivot, make sure it's going to stay with you for years to come.
I think also get those key processes, those key business processes, work the waste out, as Jerry alluded to, as soon as you can, because once the faucet turns back on, you're not going to have time to do it. And if you do it now with the people that you have, maybe we can get a couple extra points when the faucet turns back on that we wouldn't otherwise get.
And it's interesting because there's a lot of now comments that go on. What are you afraid of? What's keeping you up at night? I need to pivot. I have lack of sales. Contracts are being frozen. Sales are down with core clients. And everybody gets that, right? You get, I need to pivot. The real thing is how. How do you go through some steps, and how can the steps be easy? And that's why I'm really excited to see what Scale Up is doing and what Scale Up is going to be offering to their members, to even new members coming in, when it talks about, okay, let's put this to practice. Let's put this to good work. We're going to have 5 to 7 initiatives. We're going to get at those initiatives by establishing an appropriate vision and mission. We're going to look at our customers. We're going to look at a little bit of a competitive profiling. We're going to do a little bit of a SWOT exercise. So what we want to do and what we want to offer for members or non-members is an accelerated strategic plan that could be put on a single page that allows people to relentlessly execute on to try to pivot and get out of the logjam that they're in today. You can tell I get a little bit of passion that goes when it comes to that one, because there's a lot of businesses right now that are hurting in a huge way. I was on a call in the Sherman Phoenix building. 37 businesses in that building are all deemed non-essential. 37 businesses in one building. in the Sherman Park area where that thing was decimated and it's rejuvenated. We got to get that thing back. I mean, so that's what this is all about. And there's so many different types of businesses out there. Somebody says we're closed, and maybe that's the right answer. I'm not here to say it's the wrong answer. We're shutting down and we're regrouping. We're preserving our cash, and we're going to explode on the other side. Some other tips. This is a tip. Joe Skatarzik, a CMH grad, Paul. Mother G,
Yep.
for cripe's sakes. He's with Mother G now. My tip, and this is more of this positivity one. This is more leadership, is that opportunity abounds. Set your course and go find some. That's a mindset. That's a I'm going to get pissed off at this situation. I'm going to get really competitive, and I'm going to accelerate through this. And I don't care what nobody says about my business, essential, non-essential. We're going to get through this. We're getting through it together. But really, I'm rolling up my sleeves and I'm going to do it.
Jerry,
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Don't be sorry.
I just wanted to, thank you. I just wanted to break in and sort of take a moment to recap and wrap.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm so glad to have heard Paul talk about is choosing to be great. I agree, Paul, there's never really enough time. When business is in full operation, we're just hectic running our shops. We don't have time to write the plans and execute. And now we are so busy not running our businesses, and we just have to commit some time, energy, and focus on getting things done the way we need to. So first, let me thank you, both Paul and Jerry, for being so generous with your time, giving us this leadership now, but also offering to reconnect to some of our folks in the near future and help walk them through the creation of their plans, their growth plans, their survival plans, their pivot plans, and everything else. So imagine that there's a huge crowd applauding and showing gratitude for everything that you just shared with us right now. Or we can clap.
Welcome.
Thank you. So in summation, I just want to remind everyone, this is the perfect moment to commit yourselves to building the business that you want. Some businesses are focused primarily on growth, some on profitability, some on having extraordinary revenue. Some businesses are about just creating great product or hiring as many people as they want and changing their communities that way. This is a moment when you can focus your time on designing the business just as you'd like to see it. Once you've designed it in your mind and you've identified some ambitious goals, the appropriate next step is to build a plan. And just as we heard Paul and Jerry talk about, it is only through relentless execution of your plan. And it need not be complicated. It need not be long. It can be as simple yet as thorough as a one-page plan. But it's only through relentless execution that you can get to where you need to go. I'm excited for us to be partners. I'm excited for Scale Up to get to be a cheerleader as each of you pursues those dreams, those goals, and you write those plans. Please do stay in close touch. Use our office hours. Follow up with us, follow up with Jerry and Paul. They really do mean what they offer because they are as committed as we are and making this community everything it can be for business owners and for our employees alike. Thank you. Continue to be safe, continue to follow the guidelines, and we look forward to seeing you in person as soon as possible.